Oh, so good morning. We're holding in Daf Dalet Amud Aleph. We said the base was a house with the ani eating his bread and salt. Standing on his head or shoulders was the Kohen saying Kriya Shema. And the Gimel was 3 camels in a ruin. The first camel had a lion and a dove. The second camel carrying Eliyahu Navi. The third camel carrying David Melech. Now we're on Daf Dalet Amud Aleph. We are holding on line 8. On 8, there's a period in that line, and the last word in the line begins, Rabbi Zera Amar. Rabbi Zera said. Now I already know without reading any further that we're in the middle of something. By reading those words, I know we're in the middle of something. How can I tell we're in the middle of something? Sorry? Because you have a bracket from line before, or two lines up. But I know another, but without the bracket, without the little period, which I don't know what I'm doing there, I already know that we're in the middle of something because it says Rabbi Zera Amar, and it didn't say Amar Zera. Okay, that's a good important code you got to know. That if there's a new paragraph, a new thought beginning, we would say Amar Zera. Rabbi Zera said such and such, and that would be a whole new topic. But if it says Rabbi Zera Amar, that means, as opposed to what we said before, Rabbi Zera is coming to argue with something. So Rabbi Zera is arguing with what we said before, but where before? So
it implies a response, in other words?
The response, yeah, it's a response. Under normal circumstances, like 99% of the time, there'll be Mr. A would say, Amar Mr. A such and such, and then Mr. B would say differently. So that's what's happening here too, just as a massive gap. So Rabbi Zera is disagreeing with what was said before. He's arguing with what was said before. The question is what before? So we're actually, if you recall how we got into this discussion, way back on Daf Gimel on the base, on line
18.
Here it is. No. It's on line 36. On line 36. We said, did David Mihava Yada Palga Delelia Amos? Did David Melech really know when midnight was? Hashta Moshe Rabbeinu Lahava Yada. Moshe Rabbeinu himself didn't know, because he said Kachatzos. Then we got like many levels down, parenthetical comments. But that was our original question, which was, when David Melech got up at midnight, did he really know it was midnight? How did he know? And then we said, because even Moshe Rabbeinu himself didn't know. How did Moshe Rabbeinu not know? We see it from the fact that the verse when he spoke to Paro, he said Kachatzos at around midnight, which implies that Moshe Rabbeinu himself didn't know when midnight was. So we got sidetracked over there. We ended up saying, if you remember what I said, that we're assuming that Moshe Rabbeinu himself, Taka, didn't know, but David Melech did know because he had a trick. The trick up his sleeve was he had a kinnor over his bed that chimed. Chimed at midnight, had a chime because the wind blew, and so on. But where we left off on that topic, we said that Moshe Rabbeinu actually did not know when midnight was. So now, here comes Rabbi Zera, and Rabbi Zera says, no, Moshe actually did know. So I'll tell you the technique that I use for such a thing. You can take it or leave it. I put a little arrow, just like this. So I can put it in a second. Giving all my tricks here. Get this one off. I buy some nougat. Hello. This is my trick, for what it's worth. This is how the text looks in the Gemara, and then this is, for argument's sake, this was Gimel on base, and here is Dalet Amud Aleph, for argument's sake. So I showed you the trick I had, another trick I had. So this is a new trick I use, for what it's worth, which is I'll put a little arrow up, like that, and I'll even put a parenthetical comment where it is, like here, Gimel on base, and then I put the arrow over here on line 36. I would say Dalet Amud Aleph, so you can see. I can sort of tie myself back in there. You can take it or leave it, but anyways, I just use that so I can. This happens to be very oblique. It's like not a direct reference to what was said before. So you might just altogether miss it. So it's especially useful, ironically, because like if you're learning over 2 days, Reb Zera is commenting, you're like, what's he commenting on? So it's especially useful. Other times it'll say like, oh, and you mentioned before such and such a brisa, Amar Mar. You think like, wait a second, where in the world was that said? You just can't find it. So this is a useful technique. Just point you in the margin where it was said, and then the other place you can arrow
Why
up.
do they do that?
Why do they do that?
Yeah. They put something in the middle and like...
Well, it's all one thought. Just there is a stream of consciousness going on in the Talmudic discourse.
Okay.
So our original topic was, we remember way back when it was Baba got up at midnight, Tuash Moros early.
Right.
Then we said, wait a second, how did he know how to get up at midnight? Even Moshe Rabbeinu didn't. Then we says, well, David did because he had a kinnor. Well, how did that kinnor work? And we started talking about other Then we're like, well, our original Reb Zera says, wait. Before we move on to the next topic, I want to discuss Moshe Rabbeinu. Let's go back there. But see, there's no actual. The only signal you're getting in the Gemara that we're going back to that is just the simple words that Reb Zera Amar. Reb Zera says, in contrast to what was said before, such and such. So he's arguing. So you have to. That's the technique that I use to just sort of keep track of what's going on. Okay, come on, take it or leave it. So. Reb Zera doesn't like it. Reb Zera is going to say what you want him to say, which is everyone knows why David Melech said. Why Moshe Rabbeinu said Kichatzos. It wasn't because he didn't know. So here it is. Again, line 8. Last word. Reb Zera Amar. Moshe la'olam haviyada. Really, Moshe Rabbeinu did know when Chatzos was, but David nami haviyada, and also David Melech knew when Chatzos was. They, let's say, were aware of this spiritual shift that happened at midnight, and they sensed it, for argument's sake. Or otherwise, they were just great at the time. Either way, they knew. And if that's the case, the case is a David Haviyada. If David Melech really knew when midnight was, then Kinor Lamalei. So why in the world did he have the Kinor over his bed? He knew when midnight was. So the Gemara answers, well, of course he needed it, because Lasuri Mishinte, he had to be mitorer from his sleep. He had to wake up. In other words, he knew when it was, but if you're sleeping, he would sleep right through it. So if you're keeping track, this is something you probably wouldn't see the first or second time period to kind of be really keeping track of things. If you kept track, back in the Daf Gimel, on the base, we had 3 answers to resolve the question of the David Melech get up at the beginning of the night, at the Neshef, or in the middle of the night, at Chatzos Laila. So we had 3 answers, and they're on lines 29, 30, and 31. So the second answer on line 30 was Rabbi Zera. And Rabbi Zera was the one who had said, the first half of the night, Ad Chatzos Laila Hayim Islam Kasos, he was dozing on and off like a horse. And at midnight, then he was Mitgaber Kari, he got himself up to now to really learn. Remember the answer before that was of Osha. Osha said, either he did or he didn't sleep the first half of the night, depending on how tired he was, but by midnight, he never let it go over, even without him being awake. And the third answer was Ravashi, who had said that David Melech basically never slept. The first half of the night he learned, second half he said, cheers to the Brachos. In any case, so Reb Zera's shita was the middle shita, which was that David did mitnanem kasos. He dozed the first half of the night. So that's the case. He could sleep right through midnight because he could be unaware, and therefore he needed an alarm clock to wake him up. That's what he says. Reb Zera says, no. David Melech did know it, but he needed the Balamalek, he needed the Kinor, Le'aturi Mishinte. He had to wake up from his sleep. And I guess Rav Ashi would say, no, maybe he was up anyways, but he needed it to, like an alarm bell, like in school, to switch to next subject, so he warned. Something like that. In any case, so that's that. Now, what about Moshe Rabbeinu? V'kivan de Moshe Haviyada, if Moshe Rabbeinu knew when midnight was, Lam Leila Lamemar Kachatzos. So why did David Melech say ka, which means like?
Moshe.
I'm sorry, let's say that. Moshe Rabbeinu, thank you. Why did Moshe Rabbeinu say kachatzos if he knew when chatzos was? He should have said exactly at chatzos. So, this is the answer you wanted to hear, based on the Rashi brings in the pasuk. Moshe kasavar. Moshe was thinking like this. Shema yitu it's tignine paro. Maybe the wise men, the what do you call those guys? Astrologers, thank you very much. Moshe's astrologers would, Paro's astrologers would get the timing not exactly right. V'yomru Moshe badayu, and they would say, it's midnight, and look, nobody's dying. You see, Moshe was a liar. The fact that
Faker or one?
liar,
Okay.
I don't know what's the difference. But like a lie, I don't know. Like a lie. They say here the point is that Moshe Rabbeinu was trying to show that Hashem was in total control of the world, and these guys, Moshe Rabbeinu says at the stroke of midnight, it's all going to come tumbling down. They watch their clocks, and at midnight they say, "Oh, you see, Moshe Rabbeinu, he just got lucky." A minute later, when everyone died, so that would take away from the impact of what Moshe was trying to achieve, what Hashem was trying to achieve with the Malchus, of letting everyone realize that Hashem controls everything exactly to a T, and therefore Moshe hedged so that they shouldn't make a mistake. So Hashem, when Moshe knew when Chatzos was, Moshe said Kachatzos, so that it's the Gini Paro, the astrologers shouldn't say that Moshe is a faker and a phony. The Amar Mar, as it was said, this is from Derech Eretz Zuta, it's like one of the minor Masechtas. Lamed Lashon Chalomar, you should always teach your tongue to say Ein Yodea, I don't know. Shema Titbadeh, maybe you'll see here it's not live. Titbadeh is maybe you'll make a mistake, stumble. Even if it's the same way that I keep on saying David instead of Moshe, sometimes you make a mistake just accidentally. In any case, you say the wrong thing, v'te'achez, and they grab onto you and say, you see, he's a faker and a phony and a liar because he said and it didn't come true, or whatever it is. So this sentence here from the Lamed L'Shoncha is actually like I said, it's from Derech Eretz Zuta. It's not to Moshe Rabbeinu, it's to all of us. It's a basic, it's a din. A person should train his tongue to say I don't know, so that he doesn't overreach and then get shown to be false. Just a false prophet.
Does anyone say that the Kechatzot is a reference to the strength of midnight? Because Koach.
But I don't want this. But not, on this question, I'll ask offer for questions. Wait, but the answer question is no. I don't think so. In any case, so the back on this. So this is a separate, like, I don't know if it's a halacha, but it's certainly like a din, let's call it. A person should train himself. It's important to train himself to remember, to be used to saying I don't know. It's okay to say I don't know, lest you become a faker. People like to. The English people, I don't hear from England. The English has such richer set of slang than Americanese. So there's a word like in the UK called to blag, B-L-A-G, which means to bluff, like kind of to BS, to say a little, to mislead by not saying exactly the truth and convince someone because you don't know the exact facts, but it doesn't matter. You can sort of bluff it. Anyways, so that's what this is saying not to do. Don't be a blagger, don't be a bluffer, don't be a BSer, not quite the same nuance. And train yourself to say, I don't know, that's much better. Otherwise, once in a while, they'll eventually catch you to find out what you say isn't always true. For what it's worth, in my Gemara, I have a habit of, when I like a little famous quote, like a good gum I want to keep to be able to reference later on, I put like a little triple underline in it. So that's just a personal thing. I personally like this same statement, and therefore I got put triple underlines under Lamed L'Shoncha, you should teach your tongue Lamar, and you did say I don't know.
Kineged Zeras. The Kohen says Kineged.
Oh, right. That's exactly right. Exactly right. Very good. So the interesting, the Zohar says, Al Pi Kabbalah, they say a slight different version of, like a different implication of this sentence, that it's not to contradict it, but in addition to, that you should teach your tongue to say I don't know, meaning there's nothing wrong, maybe everything right, with speculating in your mind and speculating, which is sometimes necessary and good, and you kind of develop theories and ideas, but there's a difference between building up possible frameworks in your mind and articulating them. And you should train yourself not to articulate your own insights, just keep them personal and private, but not to share them, because once you share them, as I'm sure everyone here has witnessed, when a person articulates something, then he feels compelled to defend what he said. Much more difficult to retract and say, maybe I was wrong. If you didn't commit to it but didn't say it, then when something changes in your mind, you realize you're wrong, you can just flush and start again. But once you've sort of staked your claim by speaking something out, you feel compelled to defend it. So when if you're involved in the more esoteric stuff, certainly, but in general, if you're building frameworks to understand things, so it's good when you're not, there's a kasha, you have a teretz, you come up with a teretz, best to think the teretz yourself, you don't have to go tell everybody, maybe you should wait at least 24 hours, whatever it is, to let it sink in, and that's what they're doing also. Don't just speak out your ideas that come to you, because then you'll feel compelled to defend them when maybe it's talking not true, and you sort of believe your own nonsense, you convince yourself of your own nonsense, when later on, if you wouldn't have articulated it, and your tongue wouldn't have said it, even though your head would have thought it, you would have had this framework and you wouldn't have felt so, wouldn't have believed it so sincerely when you found out later on that you were wrong. Yes?
Yeah, now what happens if, like, you're saying, state your tongue to say, I don't know, like you're a doctor or you're a Rob, and you know the answer, you just, it's easy to say, I don't know,
Obviously it's within proper parameters. But in general, you don't most people don't have to know. You can say, I'm not sure. It's okay to say, I'm not sure. Listen, if you're a mumcha, there's a din. Like if you're a doctor and someone's coming to you, then you have to, in the accounting, you have to, of course, say. But, and it's not necessarily proper to waffle or be resolute. But other times, it's okay to say, I'm not sure, ask someone else bigger than me. All in its proper application. In any case, here you see Moshe Rabbeinu himself, who knew full well, but you see he was himself hedging, so that no one should think he was straying from the truth. Good. So that was the first answer.
Watch so much.
I was like, it's not. Everyone's become very talkative today. Not good. Everyone will get frustrated if everyone starts commenting. So I don't want that to happen. I promise I'll ask the rule, no comments. I'll take questions at the end. Let's get to the end of the thought. We'll take questions. So we have Reb Zera, who gave one answer. His answer was the like means, when I say, I'll meet you at like midnight. What does that mean? That means not exactly midnight, it means like around midnight. But like can also mean not just an approximation, but also mean a comparison. Like means, like it's midnight now, so too tomorrow. Like, so as a comparative as opposed to an approximation. So that's the second teretz given here by Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi Amar, he says no. Rav Ashi Amar, Bepalga orta de tleisar nagi arbasar hava. It was, let me say this in English first without, not translation literally. If you remember, Yetzias Mitzrayim happened on the 15th of Nisan, which means that the Makat Bechorot happened the day before, the midnight of the night before. So we're talking about 24 hours before that. So we're saying, Moshe Rabbeinu is saying, okay, like we're on, instead of being on the 24 hours before Makat Bechorot, he was standing, he was talking, and he was saying, I'll say it outside first, just like it's midnight now, so too, at this time tomorrow, Makat Bechorot's going to happen. So that's what, the words become like a lot of words, but that's the idea. Again, so I'm back on line 15, Rav Ashi says, Amar Bapalga or to the Tleisar Nagir Basar Hava. It was like on the midnight of the 13th, on the morning will be the 14th already, what we would call already like the night of the 14th, before the morning of the 14th or afterwards. Havakoi, that's when Moshe was saying what he was saying. V'hachik Amar, and this is what he meant when Moshe said it, Li Yisrael. This word Li Yisrael is a gears of problem, we'll leave it in for now. We aren't doing that always. So Moshe says to Yisrael. The reason it's a gears of problem is because if you look at the Pesukim, it seems that Moshe was talking not to Yisrael, but to Paro. But anyways, over there I thought that Paro would be getting Moshe talking to him at midnight. Either way, however you resolve the Pesukim over there, here it says, Hachik Amar Moshe Li Yisrael. Moshe said to the Jews, Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem said, L'machar, tomorrow, Kechatzos halayla, at Kechatzos, not like around midnight, but just like it's midnight now, Ki ha'idna, like if you look at your watches, you'll see it's midnight now, Kechatzos halayla, so too tomorrow night at the same time, at midnight like tonight, Ani Yotze B'soch Mitzrayim, I will, speaking on behalf of Hashem, I will go out in the midst of Egypt. So like the prefix K can mean either K as in approximately, which is how the first understanding was. That was the presumption of the kasha, and the teretz Reb Zera gave is he said it just to hedge. And the second answer is no. The K chatzos in this pasuk doesn't mean approximately chatzos. It means just like it is chatzos now. So too it will be chatzos tomorrow when Hashem goes out, as opposed to like midnight, around midnight. Good. Now I'll take questions. See? Okay, good. Okay, good. Now like a break, a new thought here. Since anyways we're talking about David and Melech, and we were talking before about getting him at midnight, and that was being praiseworthy as much as he was preceding kings by 2 watches. Remember, we had different routes, more 1.5 watches, as the carrots might be. But so now we're going to talk a little bit more on that topic about the virtue of David getting up early. That's part of the story here. Not the full story, but that's the segue into this next part of the Gemara. The pasuk says, this is the pasuk in Tehillim, the David, Shamar Nafshi, David says, Hashem, protect my soul, Ki Chassid Ani, for I am a Chassid. Now, the word Chassid, just so you know what it means, it's a technical term. The word Chassid means someone who goes like above and beyond the letter of the law. That's what it means. As opposed to a tzaddik, who is someone who keeps everything perfectly. A Chassid goes above and beyond that. When I mentioned the other day, I sort of said if there's any 17-year-olds listening, I made the point that Hashem wants to be normal, get a good night's sleep. So you can be a perfect tzaddik and sleep your, whatever it is, 8 hours a night, and live a normal life as a Jew that's a tzaddik. Someone who does what he has to do and does it right. That's all Hashem wants from people. There's like another madrega called the chassid, which is someone who goes beyond what's demanded of him and beyond the letter of the law altogether. So what's normal is legitimate and acceptable mode of living. But David Melech is pointing out here that he went above and beyond that. So our sugya is going to discuss in what aspect is David's chassidus. Now, there are a few questions that we answer at the outset. First of all, there's lots of sources that talks about David's chassidus. So David was a chassid. David was exceptional in many, many, many ways. So we're obviously going to be focusing on something particular, saying this is particularly noteworthy for some reason. But perhaps the bigger question, what the Meforshim are worried about here is, like, why would, it's fun. Like, why is David? David isn't the kind of guy who would emphasize what a chassid he was. It seems strange. So there are different roots given. I actually saw, as I was walking up the stairs, a teretz that the art scroll brings with footnotes from the Pnei Yoshua. Not somewhere I would have looked. So I'm glad I looked at the footnote before I came up the stairs here. Pnei Yoshua is like a heavy-duty achron, like from the early 1700s, Polish achron. Not the kind of person I would look to find an answer to this question. But in any case, so he gives an answer which art scroll brings with footnote, which I like very much, which is like this: that when David, remember the people didn't have a king for like 400 years. Then they come to Shmuel and they say, we want a king like all the other goyim. And Shmuel says, oh no, that's no good. If you want to be like all the goyim, it's going to be disastrous for you, and the king that you get also will be dragged down with you. So Pnei Yoshua says, according to our footnote, that David Melech is emphasizing here that he was not like the king. He's not like the king. You'll see by the answers in a second. He wants to say he's not like other king. He's a chassid relative to what the kingship demands, what other kings do exhibit in the world, and therefore that should shamar nafshi, that Hashem should spare my soul from being dragged down to any punishment that the people might get for demanding a king like the other goyim, because I am no king like the other goyim. So David felt compelled to beg Hashem to protect him by emphasizing that he went out of his way to be not like other nations' kings. I like that very much. It's good. So, in any case, so David HaMelech says, we're on line 17, the David, Shomer Nafshi, Hashem spare my soul, protect my soul, Ki Chassid Ani. So, what was the Chassidus of David? So, Levi, Rav Yitzchak, both give answers. There are 2 answers. Levi, that's his full name, he didn't have smicha. And Rav Yitzchak, we'll come back to me, we'll see in a little while. And Rav Yitzchak did have smicha. So, Chad Amar, now when you see this structure, when it says like A and B, so that's mean Chad Amar X and Chad Amar Y, what that means is Chad is Echad in Aramaic. It means that we don't know, the Gemara doesn't know which one said which. We know there are 2 guys had 2 opinions, and they said these are the 2 opinions, but we have lost track which of the 2 opinions is ascribed to which of the 2 people. That's what's going on here. So there was a machlokas between Levi and Rabbi Yitzchak over what the chassidus was of David, the exceptional chassidus that David brought to bear, let's say Pnei Yoshua, to demark himself, differentiate himself from other kings. And we're just not sure which one said which one Levi said, which one Rabbi Yitzchak said. But either way, Chad Amar Kach, one explained like this: Amar David Lefnei Kadosh Baruch Hu. David said to Hashem, or before Hashem, Rebbeinu Shalom, Lo chassid ani, am I, we're translating, we're putting words in David's mouth. Am I not a chassid? Shekol malchei mizrach u'marav, because all the kings of the east and the west, that means like the whole wide world is the Marsha, all the kings of the world, Yeshenim ad shalosh shaos, they sleep, until, what we call until midday. For them, it's just the third hour of the morning, but that's very, very, very late relative to their life schedule. In any case, the point is, other kings, as we saw before, from Yeshua's Shita, we saw in the previous daf, other kings sleep until 9 a.m. whatever it is. They get up late. Va'ani, but I don't do that. I chatzos laila akum lahodos lach. I get up at midnight, 8 hours earlier than everyone else, so to speak, other people in my station in life, to praise you. So you see, David's chassidus is he's getting up every day 8 hours earlier than what would be reasonably expected of him from some of his station in life to learn. That's his chassidus. The idach, and the other one of the two, Levi or Yitzhak, said, Kach amar David. David said, L'fnei Kadosh Baruch Hu, Baruch Shalom lo chassid ani, Hashem anar chassid, shekol malchei mizrach u'mariv, all the other kings of the world, the east and the west, it just means all of the whole world, Yoshvim agudos, they sit around, and they're like having cocktail parties. Agudos means like in their clubs, in their cliques, hanging out with their meetings, board meetings, clique meetings, cocktail party meetings, whatever it is.
Their entourages.
Yeah, that's what it says. Yeah, agudos means in groups and groups. They hang out with their fellow posh people, b'chvodam, to make themselves look chashav, to be chashav. They hang around people you know what they do. So they hang out in like in the cliques to honor themselves. But vani, my action's exact opposite. What I do isn't to honor myself. I debase myself. Ani yadayim luchlachos badam. My hands are filthy. Luchlachos is filthy. I'm not wearing a tuxedo. I'm not hanging out at cocktail parties. My hands are filthy. Badam with blood. This is dam nida, like menstrual blood. Ubeshfir, ubeshfilia. A shfir is
embryo.
It's not. A shfir is like this. When a woman miscarries, so. If it's a formed embryo, then she has to sit 7 or 14 days at Tamek, then it was a boy or girl, and so on. That's called a shfir merukam. I don't know. Depends. If it's clearly a baby that miscarried early, it's like having a birth. But what oftentimes what happens is a spontaneous abortion that happens because something's going wrong with the baby. So then you need to decide if what's going on here was merukam, like there was a child growing in here, or if it was so badly maldeveloped that no actual flesh and bone was developing here. It's just like a sack of liquid and blood and stuff. That's in merukam. It's not yet beginning to form. So that's that sack of flesh, sack of stuff. I don't know. It's like skin. It's not whatever their early embryonic skin that holds the baby, not the amniotic sac, but the skin, that stuff comes out. It needs to be examined. And if you see flesh and sinew and bone in there, then the woman sits as yoledes, and if she can't tell what it was, she'll assume the worst, 14 days like it was a girl, and then only till the 40th day like a boy, you know what I mean? If not, doesn't matter. And if not, if it's just liquid inside, so then she's tahora, then it doesn't make her tahora. She won't be like a nida, but not more than not even lettuce. So if you guys remember, those who were in Rosh Hashanah with me, so I told you that the Ran says that the shofar, he said the shofar had to have that, remember the keratin sheath on the outside, but a bone in the middle, so it would have a hollow. And I said animals that are all bone or that are all keratin are not kosher for shofros. So I said the shfir is like a hollowed out sack. And I told you in the Shabbos it also talks an eggshell, calls it a shfir. So this is the same thing, the same word. The shfir is like the sack into which goes the child, but not the amniotic sac, like the skin into which it goes. So embryo is not a great translation, just I don't know what is a good translation. Embryo implies that. In any case, so he says, my hands are, and the point is, imagine you having to roll up your sleeves and dig through this spontaneous abortion and decide if it's got bone inside and flesh, or if it's just full of blood. This is not a very dignified and glorious undertaking.
Kingly.
Right? Yeah, exactly. That's his point. His point is that I'm filthy. Yadai meluchlachos, didn't have running water and blah blah blah. It was a gross job. And imagine, you can imagine the scene. The woman's coming to bring, man, it's not a pleasant scene. So my hands are filthy, mulachlachos are filthy with menstrual blood. The woman showed me maras and shvir, showed me, like abortions. I don't know, is there a better word for that? Than abortion?
This is after
No, but I don't want that. No, shvir, I want when a woman miscarries. Miscarriages, is that what it's called? Is that the noun? Whatever it is. It is that miscarriage, the miscarried thing that came out. And shilia is probably best translated as afterbirth, because the afterbirth really has two components. I don't think Chazal really. The main part of the shilia is the when the baby lives inside a sac called the amniotic sac, and inside the mommy, and it's got a tube coming out of it called the umbilical cord that connects to its belly button, and then on the one side, on the other side, it plugs into like this piece of meat called the placenta, which is attached to the side of the uterus. And what happens is, after the baby's born, when it comes out, then out comes the sac and the placenta and all that stuff. So all that stuff is called the shilia, collectively.
Is this what he actually did this?
That's what he did. Yes.
Really?
Yes, that's what he did.
From midnight
He's a gadol door. Sorry?
From midnight onwards.
No, no, it doesn't say that. It just says no more. No, he's just saying in general. He's just saying, look, we're midnight's along is gone past us. This is the course of David's day. What did David? David was the Melech Yisrael. He was also the gadol door. So the Rambam brings. He was like, remember, I told you before that on the board yesterday, Ben Yoyada or Daniel, he was the Bezdin, but who was the Nasi? David Melech was a Nasi. Look, if you look in the Rambam, he brings like the Matika Shmuel, in the Doros. David Melech was the gadol door, his door. He was the gadol door. So if you have a shiloh that needs answering, who do you go to? You're going to go to the gadol door. That's what David Melech did.
You don't go to the Sanhedrin?
No, you don't go. Yes, head into the hospital in a shower like that. You don't go to the doctor, based into the hospital. You go to the Rav, the biggest Rav in town. I'm sure that's what Rav, whatever, you pick your name, that's what they do. What do you think? When the Rav does, when the Kornfeld does, they look at Mars. And all the way up, I don't know, I'm sure Rav Steinman does it also, if his eyes are good enough for it, etc. And if he doesn't do it now, I'm sure he used to do it. So the same thing, this one.
No, he's a Rosh Yeshiva, there's Posek and Rosh Yeshiva.
He's on the Posek? Okay, whatever it is, whatever the Gedolei Ador, the Posek, Rav Eliashiv, and so on, that's all, that's what they did, that's what they do. So David Melech, who's sitting there in his royal clothes, rolled up his sleeve, and started digging through, afterbirth, blah, blah, you can imagine. So that's his point. His point is, all of the kids sitting at their cocktail parties in their top hats, and here I am rolling up my sleeves and digging through bloody mush to figure out if the woman is Torah or not. And I think that's the point here. I think that is the point here. I mean, the last part, the Torah point, because of what it says, "Kedei letaher ish labala." I think this is Joel Padowitz speaking. I'm sure if I looked up, find someone who said the same thing. But I think the machlokus here is what's the essential chassidus of David. Again, this is Joel. I don't have a makor for this, but I'm sure it's so obvious. I'm sure other people say it. Is it that he's comparing himself to other kings, and he's saying a king is justified to behave as a king, period. The same way that everyone's justified to behave as their appropriate station in life demands of them. So either am I special because of my ben anul makom, like other kings justifiably have a lot of responsibility and they're under a lot of stress, maybe they're asleep and they sleep in until 9 o'clock in the morning, but I get up at midnight and learn a whole night long. So I'm a chassid because look at my ben anul makom, look at my relationship with Hashem. I learn all night long Torah, but I could say, what do you want from me? I'm a busy guy, I need my sleep. Or is it his ben anul chavero? Look what he does. He's the king, and yet he gives up any, he's totally mevatel his sense of kavod in order. This is the important part of the sentence. Not that his hands are filthy, but that it's kedei l'tayr ish l'bayla. In other words, because he's the gadol ador. If he wouldn't be the gadol ador, so there'd be a rule that koach the heter adifa. You want a kula, you got to go to a big Talmud Chacham. So here, David Melech is saying, if I don't do it, then people say, I don't know, assume you're tamei. And that would, of course, mean that the husband and wife couldn't be together. So in order to allow women to be with their husbands, I get involved because I'm the biggest posek in town, and I'll be able to matter, or other people won't be able to matter.
It still sounds like he's puffing, though. It still sounds like he's making...
Okay, get Thursday, okay, we'll hold that question. It's a fair question. And the Gemara actually goes, I think the Gemara is addressing your question still. But here was what he's saying. Just hear the 2 points. Hear the 2 points so far. That's what we're kind of up to here. Either David says, I'm not a chassid in as much as I don't use my kingliness to sleep in, which is justified, and look at my relationship with Hashem. Or no, look, my life is dedicated to the people, and I could, so to speak, say I'm a chashuv king, but no, I spend my life being matar ish l'bayla because, I'm the biggest, because I can. And perhaps no one else even could. So you're going to ask the question, okay, period. Those are two sides of the story, and whoever's, I don't know which one David Melech said, but both are true, and therefore both certainly give you a glimpse into David being clearly a universal chassid, that's for sure. The question only is, which chassidus did he bring to Hashem's attention, so to speak, in saying, in the schus of this, please protect my soul. Like the Yeshua said, so I shouldn't be dragged down to being Melech Yisrael. Now, your question was, well, anyways, listen, some people's covet is being the king, and some people's covet is being the posek ador. Maybe David Melech's covet was, well, they need me to tell the mutter, so maybe that is his covet. Maybe that is what he was reveling in. So David Melech says, I don't think so. Don't think that's even shot. Because below, did I emphasize this point I said I wanted to be madgishit? That ish l'bayla. Like you see that the point is he's coming to be makel. He's not coming to pas and shabbos. He's coming kadei. His whole agenda was, I want to help people. Kadei l'tar to kadei l'taher ish l'bayla. It's like a heavy point. Heavy point. That's what the chassid's agenda is, to help people, not to pas and shabbos. In any case, v'lo od. Not just that, but you might say, as you asked, well, maybe that's David Melech got his kicks out of being the Gadol Ador, and maybe that was his covenant, right? No. Ela kol mash ani oseh, he says, no matter what I did, even if I was matir, so my next move was, ani nimlach b'mifiboshes Rebbe. I would then, after I paskin, I would then go to my rabbi, and I would consult with him, and I would say, v'amar lo, I'd say, Mefiboshes Rebbe. Mefiboshes, my teacher. There's a big to-do here about calling a teacher by his first name, and so on. I'll come back to that, if you remind me if I forget. But in any case, Mefiboshes Rebbe, he says, listen, my teacher, Mefiboshes, Yafa Danti, was I right in my call saying this was mutter or tower or whatever? Yafa Chayavti, Yafa Zachisi, was I correct in passing Chayev or Zakai? Yafa Taharti, Yafa Tameti, was I correct in saying this is Tahor or Tame? V'lo Boshti, and I wasn't embarrassed. So, just the main point, I'll get that recurse back to the lesser points, the main point was that don't think I did it just to say, like, well, I'm the biggest posek in town. Just the opposite. After I'd paskin, I would then, humble myself and then let my Mephibosheth, we'll see in a second, he's called Mephibosheth because we tell him he made a mistake though from time to time. So, and I would then submit my psak to my teacher, who would then be able to, so to speak, overrule me, or at least to point out where I, might have made a mistake, to show my humility, and that it's not that I hold that I'm the biggest god in town. So that you see further what a chassid David Melech actually was. Just the small points here on the side. Rashi points out the difference between all these words, Yafa Chayavti, Yafa Zachisi, Yafa Taharti, Yafa Tamexi, because we mentioned before that there are different sections of the Torah with different kinds of rules. So Chosh and Mishpat rules, like civil law, have are Chayav and Zakai, you make someone guilty or innocent, so to speak. Chayav is liable to pay or not liable to pay, a better translation. Or guilty or innocent. That's one, and the rules that govern Chosh and Mishpat are such that are different than Tuma and Tahara, a different set of rules in Klalim. So he said I also consulted with the Tuma and Tahara issues of was I correct in saying someone was Tameh or Tahor? Okay, going back to the other point about calling his Rebbe by his first name. So, first of all, you have to say that Mephibosheth was his Rebbe Muvchak. It wasn't his. Okay, I don't think. I don't want to go into the whole long story here about Hilchos Talmud Torah and Hilchos Talmud Torah and Kavod Torah are totally intertwined topics. They're one and the same. But I don't want to go into too much into that right now because they're topic. But there are two kinds of teachers. There's your Rebbe and your Rebbe Muvchak. Your Rebbe is anyone who taught you Torah, any amount of Torah. You have some dealing with having to mechabed them. But then there's a whole new set of rules, heavy duty rules, that are your Rebbe Muvchak, your primary Rebbe, which is defined as the person who taught you most of your wisdom. Nowadays, presumably, no one has such a thing anymore because, I don't know, you have Rashi, you have the Rambam, you have the Gemara, and you have other people that are sources of information. But when the Torah Baal Peh was a Baal Peh, you relied on somebody. So you went, and they did go to the same Rebbe until they were 18 years old, whatever it was. He was your link. He was your link in the chain of the Torah. So he was your Rebbe Muvchak. So Rebbe Muvchak is the one who you see even gets presence over your father and all that kind of stuff. I don't get into that now. There's lots of very heavy duty dinim about the Rebbe Muvchak. that can't be shot over here. It can't be the Mephibosheth was David Melech's Rabbi Muvchak. Why do I say that? Because you're not allowed to paskin where Rabbi Muvchak is alive in the same city, and so on. So presumably it's not happening. Presumably he just was his, let's call him his Nida Rebbe, let's say, for argument's sake. To simplify, not exactly true. You see from the Gemara itself that he was. But in general, he was the, I don't know who he was. He was the Rosh Hashiva or whatever he was. He was his teacher, and he was the person he went to get, thumbs up or thumbs down on his psak. So then there's the question of, well, how can you call your rabbi by his first name? So one teretz, I'll stick with that teretz, is you can, if you call him with a, what's the word I want? Like by calling him like Rebbe Mephibosheth. What's it called? Like a title. What's the word? I forgot what it's called. There's a word for it. Whatever it is, it's not coming to me now. But if you give him the kavod of, he's not just Mephibosheth, he's Rebbe Mephibosheth. That's okay. That's how it will come out in the halach. And then there are plenty of people who went by Rav Moshe. There's a separate question about in front of his name, not in front of him. Like I don't think people call Rav Moshe to his face. They call him Rav Moshe, not in front of his face. Here, this is clearly to his face. He's saying, Mephibosheth's Rebbe. So okay, it has to be resolved. I'm not the exact halachas, how it would work and not work. But anyways, there's a focus. There's a discussion on that point over here.
Why didn't people just go to him instead of
Mephibosheth?
Yeah.
David Melech was a gadol door. As I always tell people, I hope this is not lost on you. I don't think it will be. Michael Jordan, who's hands down the greatest basketball player that ever lived, hands down. So he, from the day he started to the day he retired, he had a coach. He had a coach who told him, "What are you doing?" Of course, he did have a coach. I know for a fact he had a coach. Why did Michael Jordan need a coach? He's better basketball than the coach, for sure. The answer is a selach a rav. Everyone needs to make a rav for themselves because you need to have someone to tell you, someone objective from the outside to say you call it right or wrong. That's a din. A selach a rav applies to David Melech also. So what are you going to do? David Melech, there's always going to be a gadol door, but he too needs to somebody to keep himself in check. David Melech kept himself in check by going to his Rebbe, even though he was greater. But he got a second opinion. And that's you asked me before about the doctor saying I don't know. That's what David Melech is saying here. He's to the woman's face, let's say, he's being definitive. Nothing worse. Gemara says there's nothing worse than saying to the woman, "I'm not sure, maybe yes, maybe no." And that's a disastrous or something, right? So he was definitive, but after he was resolute to her, he then went back to his Rav and said, "Look at this. Do you agree with me?" And then the Rav said, "Well, I don't know, maybe da 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 da." And there's just different mefarshim to say he had some kashas and David Melech wasn't wrong or it was wrong, but just if there were kashas alone that made him nervous, whatever the exact story was, and I don't think it matters really. Because they're worried about this issue of who's really great and how can they ask it. But anyways, I just say people make mistakes. And that's how life. Not everyone sees everything. That's how it is. It's happened to me, my own personal experience. I have Shemush in terms of Gemaras, looking at from Rabbi Padowitz. He's fantastic. He's amazing at it. But it's happened to me in my own life that I said, wait a second. He said this was tahor, and then we looked and we said, I looked, and I'm not especially good at this. I said, what about this? I point out to him and he said, oh, you're right. I changed his psak. People make mistakes. That's how it is. Human beings are human beings. So, anyways, the point is David Melech submitted himself to Mephibosheth, and Mephibosheth would embarrass him, so to speak, from time to time by saying, "You didn't consider this, or you didn't see this, or what about this?" And David kept himself in check. Lahavdil, like the Jordan. Okay.
And Chicago.
So
good.
2 points.
So I'm back inside the Gemara here, which is we're on line 24. Yeah, 24. Aram Yeshua Bray Durav Evi. Bray means like the son of. Then Bar is like Ben, so Bray the son of. Durav Evi. Mikra. What's the verse that shows you that David Melech consulted with a Rabbi after he passed things? So this is the oh gosh, I'm going to look at this here. The Adabera. Someone have Nikudas? I don't know if I can say Psukim without Nikudas. The Adabra. Someone have it?
Yes.
The Adabra be'edosecha, and I will speak about your mitzvahs, Neged Malachim, in front of kings, v'lo evosh, and I won't be afraid, won't be embarrassed. So Marsha and others bring that Malachim in other places, like Gemara Gittin says it, Malachim can refer to Talmidei Chachamim. The point is that I'll talk in front of kings, meaning people who are also kings of Torah, so to speak, and I won't be embarrassed and ashamed. Busha is shame. I won't be ashamed if they tell me I made a mistake. Tana, the Brisa said on this, Lo Mephibosheth Shmo, this person Mephibosheth, the Rabbi of David HaMelech, actually his name wasn't Mephibosheth, Elet Ish Boshes, that's the gears we have in front of us. Tosfos doesn't like it, there are other Gersos, depending on who he was, whoever he was, what difference? It makes a difference to Tosfos, it makes a difference who it was, but the point is, there was a person whose name either was Ish Boshes or Marival or Val, whatever he was his real name. Whatever his real name was, why are we referring to him as Mephibosheth? If that wasn't his name. Shahaya Mivayesh Pnei David Ba'alacha. Mephibosheth is like a portmanteau of two different words. It's a, like smushed together two different words of mipi, like from the mouth, and boshet, like shame. And it was from his mouth, I'm ashamed, something like that. The mouth that shames me. Mephibosheth was his name, and that's why. So he was called Mephibosheth. Shahaya Mevayesh. He would embarrass, something like that. Shame Pnei David B'Halacha. He would, embarrass David's face, literally, in halacha. Lafikach. Now we're moving on a little bit, segueing on. Lafikach. Since David did this, since David always was humble and second checked his Piskei Halacha, he was Zached David. David was meritorious. But Yatzim Menon, he had from his offspring Kilav. Kilav was his name. And Rabbi Yochanan lo Kilav Shmo. Actually, Kilav wasn't his name. Ela Daniel Shmo. His name was really Daniel. Same kind of structure. Hence, you see the connection here. Rashi points out that the second child of Abigail, in two different psukim, is referred to as Kilav in one place in Shmuel, and in Daniel in Divrei Yamin. So there's two names here. Below Nikra Shmo Kilav. If his name was Daniel, while the pasuk referred to him as Kilav, Shaya Machlim. And again, look, it's like a notricum, like a portmanteau, two words smushed together. Of Machlim, he would embarrass. Pnei Mephibosheth B'Halacha. In other words, what happened? At least one shot, but it's good as any shot. Mephibosheth would say, "I don't know, David. Did you consider this?" And then David would, because he was humble, would say "You're right. Maybe I should have, And then Kilav would come to see and say, "Oh no, don't say that." And he would show Mephibosheth why David was really right. So he was like one up Mephibosheth. That's why he was called Kilav. He was such a super duper Talmid Chacham. He could stand up for David and answer up for him.
And the fathers will learn from the children.
Right. That's right. That's right. So, and that was obviously a great schus that David Melech had such a Talmid Chacham for a child, and that was his schus for being humble like that, and that's why his name was Daniel, but it was called Kilav. He'd be now the av in this sentence isn't David Melech, because it means like David Melech's conceptual father, the top of the pile, if you will, av like tumas, like an av, like the top of the pile, the source, because the Rabbi of David is Mephibosheth, and the av himself is getting embarrassed by what the Talmud's son is saying. Kilav. Fine. So, I'm Rabbi Yochanan, I'm on line 27. I'm Rabbi Yochanan. I'm line 28. Va'alav Amar Shlomo b'chachmaso, on this phenomenon of David Melech having a son who could out his son, as you said, who we learned from, so to speak, he didn't necessarily, but his son was smart enough to defend David against David's Rebbe. Beni, this is a pasuk from Mishlei. Beni im chacham lidcha, if you're wise, something like that, if your heart is wise. Yismach libi gam ani. I'm also happy. In other words, as I'm sure you can relate to, a father doesn't feel an affront when his son is smarter than him, just opposite. Nothing makes a father happy, and then when his son surpasses him, and so that's what David Melech is saying. If you're so smart, you're smarter than me, that makes me even happier than if you wouldn't be. Va'omer, and similarly another pasuk, also from Mishlei, a different pasuk, which is Chacham b'ni yismach libi. My son is wise, so my heart rejoices, something like that. Va'shiva charpi davar. Now, literally it means something like I will respond back to the people who say bad things about me, who disgrace me. But the drasha, I think the drasha here is, to be understood as like that because we're bringing the second pasuk. What's the second pasuk coming to add? I think the pshat is that David HaMelech's son, like I'm rejoicing in your wisdom, Kilav, and like you will turn back my cherpa, my humiliation, because I made a call. I was confident in the call. Then my Rabbi said, "Oh no, you botched it." And then you came to my rescue and said, "Oh no, I didn't botch it. I got it right." So you turned back my disgrace by standing up for me and showing my Rabbi that I was really right.
You reversed
Something like that. Yeah, very good. Okay, so I guess we'll stop here. I'll take questions. So give them time. Yeah. No, good. Okay, so we'll pause here. Sit down. Very good.